Hello, everyone. My name is Arvin Trevino. Uh, Welcome, listeners, to Poetic Nights. I would like to congratulate all listeners listening to our first pilot episode. The main theme, the topic that we're going to be discussing is grievance. And we have a few poems created by wonderful individuals.
My poem is about my great-grandmother. My name is Claudina Gutierrez, and the poem is called Remember Always. Oh, how I missed the soft sound of your voice and how sweet your wrinkled skin smelled as you held me. I will never forget you saying, I'll love you always. I swear I can still hear it in my head. In remembrance of you, I've inked my skin with your motto, although if you were here to see it, you'd be upset. I missed our talks and bickering. There isn't anything I wouldn't do to see you again. You will forever be my guardian angel. You are still my other half. There's no way I'd forget you, not in a million years. I'll love you always, my dear. And this is more of like a narrative poem because it relates to my real life experience of my passing great grandmother.
I am sorry to hear about your passing grandmother. And I think that you really put your emotions in the poem. We have other guests as well. We have Emily Alvarado, Nicole Dyer, Juliana Castro, and you can all give your opinions as well. Instead of just being a regular podcast, I will think this will be better as a group collaboration. Yes. What really stuck out to me that I liked was the motto, I love you always. Is this something that she has told you often?
Yes, when she was living, she would always tell like my siblings and I and my cousins that will always love us. And on my 18th birthday, I actually got a tattoo saying always with a little heart on the like next to it in remembrance of her.
Yes, tattoos. What's quite interesting about is that in Hispanic culture, it might be seen as a negative stigma. What do you think? Would your grandma have approved of it? Would she have gone against it?
Oh, she hated tattoos so bad. So that's why I mentioned that if she were to see it, she would have been really upset.
I see. And as the poem continues, you mentioned how you refer to her as a guardian angel who is watching you. Would you refer that as a religious belief or something?
Yeah, I think that would be like more like to like the religious side, or more of like a kind of characteristic I would see her as now, because obviously she isn't here, so she's my angel and she'll always be looking after me till the day I pass.
I see. And in the very end, there's no way I forget you, not in a million years. Is that as a form of remembrance, not just on your end, but on her end, from wherever she may be?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes. Uh, Now, wonderful news. How did you create the pattern of it? Breaking the poem down. Let's say someone who doesn't know much about poems. Did you use a modern method, or is it a classical style?
I feel like it was more of like a free verse type of creative poem. As I had mentioned also before I read it, that it was of a narrative. So that does like indicate the creative aspect of writing the poem. So it did tell like my life experiences, which was her passing and how I inked my wrists with her saying. And yeah, it was more free verse. It wasn't really a structured poem. It was just a go with the flow type of writing.
Yes, and I also find it interesting that even though it's written down, not just a memory, but her words will never disappear, literally. So I can't find that cute in a sense.
Thank you.
I can say something. This is Emily, by the way, because I know we're doing, podcast style. In terms of like this poem, I was like, when I had read it, I like honestly like teared up because of like how close I am to my grandma. And as soon as I read how sweet your wrinkled skin smelled as you held me, oh my gosh, my heart, I was like I felt that so much. And like you said, this is like a free verse poems. These are at least my type of favorite poems to write, at least in previous classes or like on my own, because it kind of just like lets you write freely, hence the name. And you know Arvin kind of like went into good portions of a lot of things with the poem, but I just like how in this poem that it's like if you're able to like live it through your eyes and through your feelings and stuff like that, just like the things that you would describe, like the ink and like I said, like the skin, the smell, I just overall like think it was a really good poem. And yeah, that's all I have to really say about that. I really liked how, like I mentioned, it was like free verse and very honest. And, I feel like a lot of people have trouble splattering out a lot of honest poems because of how hard they can be. So I'm glad that you were able to share something like this with us because of how personal it was. So yeah, I really liked your poem.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah, when I was writing it, I was very like, I was trying not to tear up, trying not to choke on my on my tears. It's very close to the heart. So thank you for your input.
I also noticed that most of the time when individuals write, they write from their subconscious unknowingly and put all of their emotions into it. And I think that's a beautiful humanistic approach that we have as individuals.
Yes, I wanted to say the same thing. It's interesting how in creative writing, especially poetry, people tend to take their own experiences, their own emotions, and their own ideas and put it into their art, into their pieces. Just like some people do with paintings, or like a painter does with painting, a writer does with writing. And I think that's that's awesome. I think that's what makes good writing, when you're able to put your own life experiences where people can relate. And even if they don't relate, they still can feel your emotion. So your piece was a super good piece, because I was tearing up myself. I could feel the emotion. I mean, it's like, you know, everything that we went over in this past series displayed.
Thank you, Juliana.
You're welcome.
Yes. Shall we move on to the next poem?
Totally, yeah, sure.
Do it. Who's next? I think I turned mine in last.
I think I'm next. I'm Nicole, and my poem was about my grandpa. My kind grandpa inspired me to love others the way you loved and cared for me. In my mind, through the winters and summers, I dream about the day you were set free. How do I love you? Let me count the ways. Love for you is beyond words can say. What I would do to go back to those days that were spent in Tampico sailing away. You were my bright light through the darkest nights. The reason for my coffee addiction, memories of sweet bread and coffee nights. Never stop loving me despite your condition. You're gone and I'm left with a broken heart. Remember my love whilst we're apart.
I think this poem has lots of symbolism with the Latin culture. What I love the best is, you were my bright light through the darkest nights, the reason for my coffee addiction, memories of sweet bread and coffee nights. And kind of makes me think of every afternoons where individuals get together with their grandparents. They have merienda by eating pan dulce, having coffee, or rare occasions teas. And those sweet moments are something that we should really remember about those conversations that they've had about their history, talking about ranchos. So I really like that aspect about the poem.
Yeah, I also did really enjoy like all the symbolism within her poem. And I'm sorry about your grandpa, Nicole. I hope he's in a better place. He's watching over you as well. Also, it rhymes a lot within every verse. There was a lot of rhythm, and it had a really good flow. I really liked it.
Also, when I was reading the poem, and this is also another I love this poem too, because I feel like a lot of us can relate to this. I know I'm very close to my grandparents, so we already got one poem on a grandma, now this one on a grandpa. Like, it really hits home. And I like that there's a lot of imagery in it, just because like when you mention winters and summers, like it's something to picture. And then the sailing and the coffee and then the bread, just like things that we are able to picture. And kind of like Arvin said, it kind of does tie into our culture a little bit, just because of like certain things that were like the sweet bread and all that. So it's kind of like this kind of gives us the readers a way to kind of connect to the story through the imagery and also the symbolism that was mentioned. I just think overall, this poem gave me like a way to kind of like live through how you saw some of these memories with your grandpa, which is like amazing for that you're giving us the opportunity to actually see these things like how you saw them. So I really enjoyed your poem.
Thank you.
I've noticed that the biggest impact was the last two stanzas. You're gone and I'm left with a broken heart. Remember my love whilst we are apart. And we're all human. We've all lost individuals. 2 years ago, I've lost my grandma. And then a year later, I lost my aunt from cancer. And so I find it amazing how, regardless of wherever they may be, hopefully in a better place, yes, but that they will also remember you and you will all continue to remember them. And it feels like an endless love, but also heartbreaking because it's like, how should I say, a TV where you're just watching the show from the other side, but you can't go back and communicate with them. So those two stanzas brought the beauty to the entire poem.
I agree with everybody, and I also love your poem, but I swear I'm glad there's a mute button because you guys have me like ugly crying over here. I can relate to both the grandpa and the grandma poem. I'm currently going through, my grandparents are still alive, but I was raised by them, and I'm like kind of experiencing them going to the last chapter of their lives. So you guys have me crying. The awesome poems. I love them.
Yes. By any chance, what is the pattern for the poem?
For mine, I just tried to make it rhyme, like at the end.
Yes, yes. And it was done such a fine job.
I believe now we have one more poem, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna go. I'll try not to cry. My poem is called I Grieve the Living. I grieve on a daily basis, desolation behind my many faces. I grieve time, I grieve places, I grieve the memories my mind purposely displaces. And while I suppress what's inside my head, still, I also grieve the dead. But I grieve the living most of all. I grieve my grandma and her random calls and showing up at my door with leftovers from the day before. I grieve for my grandma who gave me the hugs and loves others couldn't. I grieve for my grandma even though they say I shouldn't, because my grandma is not dead. She is merely lost inside her head. Alzheimer's, dementia, the doctor isn't very clear. I grieve so deeply for a woman who is still here.
Juliana, you have, oh my God. My grandma also has dementia and she's still alive right now. So I completely understand like the heartache in this poem. Like, that got to me. As soon as I saw that last part, I was like, oh no. Like I knew this was gonna hit me. I, like I said, I understand where most of this is coming from, dealing with it on my own too. And, just, when it's that just like little things where you're saying how like the doctors aren't very clear.
Yes.
And I grieve so deeply for a woman who is still here. Oh my God. I understand. I keep repeating that, but I just like really
No, yes, it's super hard to go through. I mean, to knowing that they're there, but they look at you, and especially with the masks, we recently had to put her in a nursing home because she was getting like aggressive. So with the masks, we have to pull them down, and as soon as we put them back up, she already forgets who we are. It's
very hard.
I'm crying.
It's rough.
It's very hard. And, you know, thank you for sharing that. I know I don't know if I'm ready to put that in a poem yet. So for me to see that you did means a lot, because I feel like this type of illness needs to be talked about more.
Yes.
So I'm grateful that you did. And, you know, I noticed how this poem, I guess we consider it a rhyming poem because of all the times you're rhyming. And I think that like added a very good touch to the poem. And because you were able to rhyme in a way that still had like, how do I say it? Like the rhyming, I guess, made it flow so good. And it kind of like put it all together towards the end. And, you know, like I said, there's some imagery there, like showing at my door and like the leftovers, like things that we can picture actually happening. And then, you know, there's some symbolism there, which I'm pretty sure others will go into detail on, but I've noticed it just like by like, you know, reading through it again right now. But yeah, I overall really enjoyed your poem.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I find it interesting that the poem mentions, I grieve the dead, but I grieve the living most of all. And it kind of shows that as human beings, eventually, one day or another, we may or may not go through this same process that people of that Alzheimer's dementia will affect. And like Emily mentioned, I do think this is possibly a warning that hopefully we can prevent it. I know well, my grandma is still around, but she does have early signs of Alzheimer's that we have been noticing here and there. And it is sad, but the only thing we can do is just help them.
Yes. And I mean, about the thing about dementia is if it's treatable, I mean, it's not curable, but it's treatable. My grandma it hit her hard because they refused treatment because they're kind of old school, my grandparents, and that was something that they thought that they could just, I don't know if they thought they were invincible or what, but she never took the medication or received any type of treatment that she was supposed to receive. But they lived a good life. They partied hard, they vacationed hard. And in my poem, I kind of cut it off because when I said I grieve the living, it was the first thing that popped into my head because I haven't lost a lot of loved ones. So the first thing that popped into my head was I still feel grief. I still grieve for my grandparents, even though they're still alive. And I was going to continue on to my grandpa, but for the sake of time, I thought, no, I'm just going to cut it here. I'm not going to go that much deeper into it. So I left it mostly about my grandma.
No, yeah, Juliana, you really, like, even if it was cut short, you withheld nothing. Like, it was powerful. It was very poetic, and you didn't compose yourself. Like, we heard like the pain in your voice, and you really gave, like, you touched all of us, like, because we all like have the same, like, we're dealing with the same things, like with our grandparents and everything. I'm so glad that we all shared like these poems, and they were all like so like relatable.
I know, what are the odds?
Well, I believe we've discussed that most of the poems have a strong relation toward grievance. And we've touched most of the topics and details on all of them. And if it's okay with everyone, shall we end it here?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I think we're good on time. We could do it.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.